Today, I'm taking you deeper into a story that has already taken unexpected twists and turns. A story about forbidden love, betrayal, and the painful aftermath of choices that can't be undone. If you thought the first part of this tale was a whirlwind, trust me, the next chapter will leave you questioning everything. This is the continuation of a story about a love between a guy and his girlfriend's dad that broke all the rules, where lines were blurred, hearts were shattered, and the fallout was more complicated than anyone could have imagined. It's a story of guilt, redemption, and the painful process of picking up the pieces when life doesn't go as planned. So, buckle up and stay with me until the end, because this story doesn't offer easy answers. Only more questions, more emotions, and a tangled web of relationships that will make you wonder, what would you do in their place? Title: My Girlfriend Caught Me and Her Dad. It was never supposed to happen. It was one of those things you hear about in hushed whispers, something so taboo and surreal that you never think it could be part of your story. But life has a way of pulling you into the unexpected, of forcing you to face the parts of yourself you didn't even know existed. It started innocently enough, just casual conversations between Jerry, my girlfriend Clara's father, and me. At first, he was nothing more than Mr. Peterson, the jovial, larger-than-life figure who always had a story to share or a beer to offer. Over time, as Clara and I grew closer, Jerry and I began to form a friendship of our own. We bonded over shared interests, cars, sports, and the little escapes from everyday life that we found in Jerry's garage. The garage became our haven. It was where we tinkered with his vintage truck, shared beers after a long day, and talked about everything from football to life's big questions. Jerry had a way of making you feel seen, like your thoughts and opinions mattered. Beneath his hearty laugh and strong exterior, there was a quiet vulnerability, a side of him that he rarely showed to anyone. The relationship between Jerry, my girlfriend Clara's father, and I had grown deeper than I ever anticipated. What started as casual conversations in the garage turned into stolen moments of vulnerability, shared secrets, and a bond that neither of us could ignore. The attraction simmered beneath the surface for weeks, unspoken but palpable, until one night, we crossed the line. Clara had left for a weekend trip with her friends, leaving Jerry and me alone in the house. The atmosphere felt heavier than usual, charged with an unspoken tension that hung in the air. I wasn't sure how we got to that point. Maybe it was the wine we shared over dinner, or the way his hand lingered on mine for a second too long when passing the bottle. What I do know is that by the time the clock struck midnight, I found myself in his arms, a mixture of fear and exhilaration coursing through me. That weekend became a whirlwind of emotions. Every glance, every touch, felt forbidden yet intoxicating. We convinced ourselves that Clara would never know, that what we shared was our secret to carry. But secrets have a way of unraveling, don't they? The following weekend, Clara came back earlier than expected. Jerry and I hadn't planned for it. We thought we had more time, more space to navigate this fragile, dangerous connection. It was late in the afternoon, and Jerry and I were in the living room. The house was eerily quiet, the kind of stillness that magnifies every small sound. We were sitting closer than we should have been, sharing hushed words about how things felt too complicated, too dangerous. Yet, there was something magnetic that kept pulling us together. Just as his hand brushed against mine, we heard the sound of keys jingling at the front door. Panic set in. Clara was supposed to be hours away, and yet here she was, stepping into the house at the worst possible moment. We scrambled to put distance between us, but it was too late. Clara's voice rang out cheerfully, calling for us. The sound of her footsteps grew louder as she approached the living room. And then, she stopped dead in her tracks. What's going on here?" she asked, her voice laced with confusion and suspicion. Her eyes darted between Jerry and me, taking in the tension we hadn't managed to hide. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. Jerry, usually so composed, was at a loss for words too. Is there something you two aren't telling me? Clara's tone grew sharper, her eyes narrowing as realization dawned. It was as if time froze. The truth hung heavy in the air, impossible to ignore, but too painful to voice. Clara's face shifted from confusion to betrayal, her eyes welling up with tears as the pieces clicked into place. "You and my dad," she whispered, her voice breaking. The look on her face was enough to shatter my heart into 1,000 pieces. She dropped her bag on the floor, the sound echoing through the room, and stormed out of the house without another word. The fallout was brutal. Clara refused to speak to me, cutting off all contact. I tried calling, texting, even showing up at her door, but she wouldn't budge. Jerry and I were left to face the consequences of our actions, the weight of what we had done sinking in like a heavy stone. Jerry was devastated, torn between his role as a father and the feelings we had developed. The guilt was written all over his face, and for days, the house was filled with a tense, suffocating silence. Eventually, Clara agreed to meet me, but it wasn't the reunion I had hoped for. "I trusted you," she said, her voice trembling with anger and sadness. "And you betrayed me in the worst possible way." I tried to explain, to tell her that what happened with Jerry wasn't something I planned or even fully understood. But how do you justify something so impossible to forgive? "You had a choice," she said, her eyes blazing, "and you chose him." Those words cut deeper than anything else. In the weeks that followed, I tried to make sense of everything. Jerry and I had something real, something neither of us could deny, but at what cost? Clara was gone, and the damage to their family felt irreparable. I often wonder if there was a version of this story where no one got hurt, where love didn't have to come at such a steep price. But life isn't that simple, is it? Sometimes, the connections we crave the most are the ones we're never meant to have. And while Jerry and I found something unexpected in each other, it came with consequences that will haunt me for the rest of my life. That's the story, friends, a messy, complicated, and deeply human tale of love, betrayal, and the choices that define us. Let me know what you think. Would you have acted differently? Could you forgive something like this? Drop your thoughts below. Until next time, stay curious and stay kind.